Hello and welcome to Your Property Empire. I'm Chris Gray. And Tom Panos and Charles Tarby are travelling overseas tonight, and so I thought we'd have a special show all about buyers agents so you can get to see how the professionals buy and negotiate property. We'll take a look at why they target certain types of properties, how they try and buy them before they come on the market, and then how they renovate to add value. Now, joining me tonight on the show is the best buyer's agent I know, one of my team members, Josh Masters. So welcome, Josh. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I guess for a lot of people, they still don't know what buyer's agents are. It's still a reasonably new thing around town. So can you explain to the viewers kind of what are buyer's agents and why do we need them?
Sure. Well, if you go in to sell a home, usually you'll engage a sales agent and a professional to represent you in the market. And we are very much like the same thing for a buyer. We actually go in and represent them in the negotiation and carry through to the process as well. Generally, we'll charge very similar amounts to a sales agent. It's about 2% of the property purchase price.
So I guess the classic thing is most people out there have already bought property, most people are fine buying homes and things like that. So they say, well, why would I pay someone like you when I can do it myself and maybe save that 2%?
Yeah, look, there's a few reasons for that, and a lot of it comes down to outsourcing and engaging a professional. A lot of people are time poor these days, so they need somebody to go in and represent them in the market, and often they're not even here in the country themselves, or they may even be interstate. The other reason is that we have access to off-market properties or silent sales, which a lot of the general public will never have access to. The other reason is our expertise. We know what to buy in the market and what makes often the best investment that a lot of people won't understand.
Yeah, because I actually had an email from Charles, and he was saying, I think nationally the clearance rate was 72.2% this week, 20% higher than last year. Sydney was 75.2% and Melbourne 79.7%. So tell us more about the silent sales, because when the clearance rate goes up, it gets harder and harder to buy property because there's a lot more competition, isn't there?
That is correct. There is a lot more competition, but a lot of people find it very convenient. If you're a vendor, you're not looking often for the best price on the market. Sometimes it's all about convenience and getting in there and getting the sale done quickly. But they can also get in trouble with divorce or financial situations where they need to get rid of the property quickly. So they will go to an agent and say, listen, I just need this property sold. Who do you know that can go?
And I guess the thing is, from the buyer's perspective, is that if they keep missing out at auction because everyone's going to auction, everything's selling, that's when they need to maybe get the inside track to say, oh, I'll pay a fee and then I don't have to go to auction, I can get something before it goes on the market.
That's right, and that's often one of the best advantages that we'll often provide to the clients when they're coming to us.
So I guess the next big question is what suburbs do buyers agents buy in? Because we've had a lot of buyers agents on the show from around the country and they all typically tend to buy the same things. So at least that gives, I guess, clients some assurity that everyone's on a common path. So say you buy in Sydney, what are the kind of suburbs? And we'll actually pull up a graphic with some of those suburbs as well.
Sure. Well, I mean, for us, we actually specialise in high growth areas, and that means Sydney suburbs within the 10-kilometre radius. We're focusing on the eastern beaches, lower North Shore and parts of the inner west. They generally have the strongest consistent growth over time, and they're actually a lot less risky. They're far less volatile over time.
So that's good. And so I guess when people are looking at like a whole bunch of different suburbs, I mean, quite often those blue chip suburbs, they're going to be pretty expensive, aren't they? So it's not necessarily for everyone.
Oh, it's definitely not for everybody, but often it comes down to, I mean, we specialise in investments, so it still has to be affordable because we're having tenants move in there and they need to be able to afford to live there as well. So for us, we often shy away from homes. Often the average price for a home in that area is 1.2 million, which is far above what people are willing to pay. We tend to focus on properties that are around the median price point that people can still afford to get into.
And we'll get a bit more detail about those target properties, and again we'll put a graphic up on the screen. So typically, generally 2-bedroom units?
Generally 2-bedroom units, that's where we find the majority of the market sits. For the areas that we're buying in, very high demand, so parking is essential. I always find that there's often more cars on the road than there were 10 years ago, so parking's a great little asset to buy into. Next to that, we always think about what the tenant is looking for, what appeals to them. So good light, good layout, access to the outdoors through a balcony or something like that, and generally convenience, somewhere close to cafes, close to the restaurants and close to transport.
Now, saying those things on the two-bedders, could some people argue then, well, what about going for a one-bedder because it's more affordable, or maybe a studio? And then I guess on the other side is, why not get a three-bedder, because then maybe you've got three people paying for it?
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, we still buy one-bedders and three-bedders. As I mentioned, the two-bedders are the majority of the market in where we're buying. But if you need to get into a one-bedder in a great location, I would certainly take that over a two-bedder in an average location.
Yeah, and so it's a bit of way up. I guess that's the perfect things. Is there the perfect property out there, or is there always something that you kind of, it's a bit of grey area? So what if it was south-facing, or what if it had a lift or something like that?
Listen, there's always pros and cons to every property. I don't think we've come across a property that ticks every single box, but you do have to weigh up what it's going to mean over time, and there are deal breakers for us. So when we're going through, we'll weigh up and say, okay, this one against this one, yes, that one's definitely out, but we can pick up something over there.
So for instance, say something was south-facing, but it had an ocean view, then the ocean view would probably outweigh the slight negative.
Absolutely.
And maybe there's a lift, but you suddenly get, say, like a Kirribilli or something, then quite often they've got lifts in there, but you get a great harbour view, you see the Opera House and the bridge. That's got to be worth it.
That's right, and even holding costs like maintenance costs, strata levies, we say, okay, anything over $1,000 we won't look at. But if it's $1,100 or $1,200 and it's a fantastic property, then it's worth paying that money. But if it goes to $2,000, well, that's a deal breaker for us.
Now, another one of the points we had on there was ideally trying to target blocks that have only got 12 units in there. Would you ever go more, and what's the downside from your perspective of buying into larger blocks?
It all comes back to supply and demand. If you're buying into a block that has 50 or 100 units in there, often many of the units in there are very similar. They've got a similar aspect, and so the demand is watered down over time. What we're looking for is something that's quite tight in the market. There's not very many of them. A small block of 4 or a small block of 6 can often be one of the best things you can get, because people who move into there often feel very homely. It's like a smaller community, it's very manageable, and it's a lot more appealing.
Yeah. Now, in terms of, again, some of the suburbs that you're looking into, then you might get, say, like a Residex saying like 2026 Bondi is a good suburb to buy in. Everyone kind of knows that.
Sure.
But is there different pockets, and is there different size to the suburb, or can you just basically buy anywhere in that postcode and you're generally going to do pretty well?
Listen, generally you may do well, but there's certainly pockets that we target when we go into a suburb, and often it comes down to even the buildings themselves that are quite specific. But 2026, for example, encompasses Bondi Junction, Bondi and Bondi Beach, and there are definitely different scales within that suburb itself. And the ones close to the water I often find a better demand and will often attract a higher price.
Okay, and then the age-old debate is new versus second-hand. A lot of people say, oh, look, new's absolutely fantastic, everyone falls in love with it, you get all the depreciation benefits. Do you generally prefer to go for those, or more for the second-hand?
We prefer established properties. That's our preference. One of the main advantages is you can add value, and I know a lot of people go into new properties and they're looking for the depreciation. Essentially, you shouldn't be investing in an asset because of the tax benefits. You should be looking at the underlying fundamentals. And what I find is usually a disadvantage with new properties is that you're paying a premium because it's all shiny and new. Often the location is secondary because all the best locations were taken back in the 1970s and 1980s. And then you have things like high maintenance costs. The levies are often astronomical. And quite frankly, Chris, they don't build them like they used to. I think the older blocks certainly stand up a little bit to better wear than the ones that come up these days that are built brand new.
And certainly that's the kind of information that we normally do on our purchase or pass, telling you the pros and cons of buying into certain properties. Anyway, after the break, we'll find out how professional buyers agents negotiate the best possible price. We'll be back soon.
You work and work for years and years. You're always on the go. You never take a minute off. Too busy making dough. Enjoy yourself. It's later than you think. And
The all-new Honda Accord. All the technology you need in one very luxurious drive. Why wait to have it all?
get out and see the world.
refinance your variable rate home loan with UBank and you could save $1,000 interest in the first year. If not, we'll give you $1,000 when you switch. Apply today, because at UBank, the rewards are real.
Officeworks works for your business. It's easy to shop in store with our extended trading hours or online 24/7 through your personalised business portal, or speak to your own account manager. Visit Officeworks Business online and find out how Officeworks works for you.
Welcome back to the show. Now tonight I'm joined by one of my buyer's agents, Josh Masters, and we're discovering the inside secrets of how professional buyers search and negotiate property deals. So I guess the big question now is, you found the right suburb you want to get into, you know ideally the type of property you're after. How do you then go and search? Is it a case of just getting on the internet to go on realestate.com and going from there?
Well, listen, absolutely, for the general public it probably is, and I'd be lying to say if I didn't get online myself and have a look around. The truth be told, we can't get to every agent out there, but we do certainly search online. But a lot of our deals, and particularly this year, 40% of my deals have come from off-market or silent sales, which means an agent, a selling agent, has come directly to me, offered me a property that's about to come on the market or may not even make it to market, and say, would you like to have a shot at this?
And so again, what's the main reason for that? Why would they not just put it on the internet and just tell everyone? Why specifically come to a buyer's agent?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, convenience is definitely one thing, but a lot of people have an issue with privacy. They don't want people coming through their homes for the next 4 weeks or even 6 weeks in an auction campaign, and they're just looking to get rid of the property quickly, often in case of divorce or a financial difficulty.
So is it really, say if they got a price in mind, say 700, and the agent says to them, oh, well, I can go straight to one buyer and he'll pay 700, and they're thinking, well, that's the money I wanted. If I can do it without the hassle, then just go ahead.
That's absolutely true. And listen, we're building property portfolios. We always tell our clients, it's not about drilling these people down for the last cent out of, getting blood from a stone. It's about getting the right property in their portfolio that's going to perform in the long term. And often that means offering fair market value. And that comes back to getting a valuation done.
Yeah. And again, going back to the realestate.com things, is I guess one of the great things about using those kind of websites is you can just get property alerts. So you don't have to go through thousands of properties. You can literally say to the dollar how much you want, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms and all that. And then you're literally only looking at maybe 10 or 20 properties a week. Absolutely.
But I think one of the things that we express to our clients is it often comes down to process and getting that deal done as quickly as possible. And while the general public will go in and they'll have a look online and they might turn up to the first or second open, and after a week or so they might think, you know what, I think this is property for us. We have often turned over 2 or 3 deals within that time, and it's a very quick time frame. We can often do a deal in 2 or 3 days sometimes.
And so would that be one of the reasons why the agents generally don't go for the silent sales to the first home buyers or just to the general public, because they can't make decisions and they might sit on the fence for a couple of weeks and then the agent's just wasting time?
One of the biggest difficulties a sales agent will have is sorting the tyre kickers out from the actual purchases. And I think that when we come into the market, I mean, I liken it to being a frequent flyer. We buy so many, we get treated much better because they know we do the deals and we do them straight away.
Again, it's being inside the industry, you get treated differently from someone outside.
Absolutely.
Or paying retail. I guess quite a lot of people in the property books and the magazines, they talk about targeting vendors direct. Do you get many deals from people that want to cut the agent out of the deal and save 10 or 15 grand and come straight to you?
Sure. We definitely don't make it typical practice. As I mentioned, off-market deals give us a great competitive advantage, and we would be cutting our own throat to cut the agents out of the deal themselves. But what we often find is that vendors naturally have a very high price expectation on the properties that they have, and often we find that the sales agents come in and condition them down to what is probably more market reality on the prices.
Now, obviously, if you're looking at two-bedders all the time, you must have seen literally thousands of them. You get to know the market. But even as a professional who would know exactly what a property's worth, what kind of due diligence do you do to make sure you're making the right decision? Yeah,
good question, Chris. Every property that we purchase, we always do due diligence, and this involves usually 3 things. One is the strata inspection for units, the other is the building inspection, and the third is the valuation. Now, if you're buying a home, strata inspection won't be necessary, but you will have to get a pest inspection. But every single purchase we look at, whether we purchase it or not, gets those 3 reports done.
And so what does that cost roughly?
Generally for us, we can round it up to about $1,200 to $1,250.
And so I guess a common argument for viewers out there is going to be, why would I spend $1,200 if there's no guarantee I'm going to win at auction, especially if there's high clearance rates? There's lots of competition, there's 20 people bidding. Surely that's a lot of money to throw away if I don't win the property.
If you've done the fundamentals right and you've picked out the property you want, you should be able to fine-tune that down to about 3 properties. Now, the due diligence themselves is probably the best money you'll ever spend. I liken it to an insurance. The valuation will give you fair market value to make sure you're not paying what we call overs in the market. And the strata and building inspection, I've seen literally tens of thousands of dollars on the next owner coming in because of improvements that they're not aware of. And that often happens and can be unveiled in a strata or building report.
And again, with all the auction clearances so high and properties selling pretty quickly, what's the best way of getting an offer to an agent and trying to get the property off the market as soon as possible?
Well, I always say verbal offers are not worth the paper they're not written on. We always do a signed contract with 10% deposit and a 66W. Now that's an unconditional contract. In New South Wales, we obviously have gazumping, which means that once you've exchanged, you have a cooling off period, and you can actually have a counter offer that the vendor can accept, and you can lose that deal. So when we come in, we offer those 3 things unconditionally. That means once the exchange takes place, the deal is done. Now, taking that into account, the due diligence must be done before an unconditional offer is put on the table.
And again, I guess it depends where you are around the country, because certainly I think up in Queensland, most people would just have that calling off, and then the agent probably wouldn't push it around. But especially in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, if you have an unconditional contract, which I don't think we've ever done in our lives, then the agent would be punting it around saying, I've got a guaranteed 700, who wants to pay me more? And they'll be pushing for more money.
Absolutely, and I sat with one of the best performing agents in the East today, and he said that he hasn't done an unconditional or a conditional contract for years. The demand in the East and where we shop is so hot, you'd be crazy to give another person 5 days to get in and rebuff your offer.
And I guess that all comes down to the suburbs. So if you really want the best suburbs, you've got to pay top prices, and it's going to be tough to try and find that. Whereas if you go slightly further out of town, where there isn't as much demand, there's maybe more supply of property, then it's easier to transact. But by definition, in a way, then it's maybe not grow as much because there's not as many people chasing it.
That's right, and in these hot markets, what we consider fair market value, if you can pay that, that's a good deal. If you go out west, you might be negotiating down on the price, so it can be very different markets in those areas.
Yeah, so certainly our prices don't go down, unfortunately. There's no chance of starting off at 700 and ending up at 650.
Oh, I wish there was.
Yeah. Anyway, after the break, we'll be seeing how you can renovate to add value, even in a flat market. We'll be back soon.
That could be a simple mistake. Or a deliberate move for a long-term advantage.
Perhaps.
But no, you're someone who plans ahead. I'm thinking you don't make a move unless you've thought things through. And if you don't have an answer, you'll find someone who does.
ANZ Wealth Managers can help you make the right moves to achieve your long-term goals.
Nice move.
Remember when you first got your license? At Amy, we do. That's why we created our skilled drivers course for drivers under 25. Free for your kids with our comprehensive car insurance.
Welcome back to Your Property Empire. Now we're speaking to Josh Masters, one of the buyer's agents at Empire, and we're just talking about renovations and how to add value to your property. So we talked a bit briefly about kind of new versus second-hand, or maybe some of the reasons not to get into new. Is there still a lot of opportunity with second-hand properties to add value and really create a profit?
Oh, listen, there definitely is. There's a lot of people out there making a lot of money with renovations, and certainly, you know, programs like the Block have really taken that to the nth degree. And over the last 10 years, renovations really become part of the Australian vernacular.
And I mean, before a buyer's agent, you were like a designer, so you're dealing with people doing renos all the time. Is it a lot for most people to kind of chew in away? It's like kitchens, bathrooms, doing a whole unit. Is that something more for the experts?
I think we see the romantic ideals on TV, but in reality, it's very, very difficult. And project managing that sort of thing can take a lot more out of you, and especially still most of the weekends for the year, I think.
Yeah. Now, I think it's always, being the ex-accountant, it always comes down to the numbers rather than all the pretty things. We'll pull up an example on the screen, but do you want to take us through some of the numbers of what you classically do?
Yeah, so I think we're seeing here a purchase price of, say, $600,000. Now, renovation costs generally for us, a full unit renovation top to bottom is about $70,000, which is about 10 to 12% of the property itself. That can often differ. Valuation afterwards, generally we're aiming for that extra little bonus in there, taking it to $700,000, adding instant equity of about $30,000. Now, while this is equity in the bank, it's actually only paper profits. If you went and sold this later on, what we call flipping, you would actually probably lose most of this in agents' costs and then stamp duty again if you were buying.
Yeah, because stamp duty on, say, $600,000's about $30,000.
Exactly.
Probably 15 or 20 grand to then go and sell it, so your money disappears. But again, if you go to buy that property, say, from a really good agent at a really strong auction, it might even go for 720 in a boom kind of market.
That's true, and listen, bottom line, you've still added equity of $30,000, which can be used to fund maybe the next deposit on your next investment pool.
Yeah, and at least it pays for the stamp duty and maybe some of the buying costs and stuff. So the next thing is cash flow, and again we'll put up another graphic. So you actually try and want to get the renovation to actually pay for itself, i.e. the rent to pay for the mortgage payments, don't you?
Yeah, so what we do here is, I mean, everybody understands what a cash flow positive investment is. It puts money in your pocket, and in this case we've got the rent before the property was renovated was $500 a week. The rent after $620, so it's actually putting $120 in your pocket. Now, less costs of that $70,000 to borrow that money actually costs $67. So you're actually getting $53 a week in your pocket. So you've invested $70,000 and you're getting $53 a week in your pocket for that investment.
So I was talking about, it's almost like buying a 70 grand property, really.
Exactly.
You'd normally only expect $60 a week, but if you're getting an extra 120 a week, it's like you're getting a 10% return on that money out there.
That's right.
Which is good. I guess the other thing is 70 grand for a lot of people could be a lot of money, and they think, oh, am I going to get the value back? And we're obviously seeing the value go up. But how should people work out how much to spend on a reno?
Listen, it's really property specific, and I often gauge how the market's going to react to that as well. What's the market looking for in that area, and how bad is the condition of the property in the first place? Does it need just a quick coat of paint and a new carpet, which could cost $5,000 to $10,000? And really, that's can really add some value to the rental itself. But some places need to be gutted and they need to be fitted out top end, depending on which market you're in, and that could range from anything from a laminate kitchen right through to a marble bathroom.
So it's really a case of understanding the market, speaking to the sales agents and the property managers to really understand who's going to be renting it, who's going to be buying it, and then renovate for those kind of standards.
Exactly, Chris, and that's a great point. I often find talking to the property managers who are going to lease that property out and talking to the sales agents for what people are looking for in that area is often the best key points to make for a renovation when it's coming up.
Now, that's some really good information on the buying side. I guess the question everyone wants to know is what's happening in the market. So what do you see? Obviously, there's lots of pockets around Australia. You're very much in an investment market. How do you see it?
Listen, I tell clients it's a great time to buy about 6 months ago. Now is a good time to buy, and I think in the Sydney cycle we're definitely on the up and up. In the last 3 months, which you probably won't see in the data coming out, but we've seen very, very strong results. In the east themselves, I think it's about 78% on the auction clearance rate. So listen, now is a great time. The good thing is about property, it is a slow moving market. It's not like the share market. You haven't missed the highs and lows already. You get in now and it's a good time to invest for the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, but it is harder and harder for people to get in because even the professionals are getting gazumped, aren't they?
That's right, and listen, there's always different strategies to get that deposit together. Often I've seen a lot of people borrowing from their family or even getting together as friends and putting that deposit in and investing as a group.
So, sounds wonderful. Thanks a lot for your information.
Pleasure.
Cheers. Now, next week we'll be back to our normal show with Tom Panos and Charles Tarby. Now, for our Viewer Dilemma segment, we've teamed up with Rams Home Loans, who are doing a Facebook competition, and they're asking entrants to tell us in 50 words or less what advice you need to get on the property ladder. Now, we'll be featuring some of the entries on the show, and the winner will get $6,000 of consulting services from myself, John Edwards from Residex, who also appears on the show, and Cara Baldock from Rams Home Loans. Now, all you need to do is simply go to Facebook and friend Raymond A. Ram, and all the details are in there. So thanks for joining us this evening. I hope you've enjoyed the special show, and all back to normal next week. Until then, I'm Chris Gray. Good night.
The information featured in this program is general in nature and therefore should not be relied upon. Guests appearing on the program may have commercial arrangements with some of the companies mentioned. Before making any investment, insurance or financial planning decisions, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you.
Today, Plan urgently needs people like you to sponsor a child. When I saw Plan's life-saving work, I was inspired to sponsor a boy and a girl. I've seen how sponsorship gives you a personal connection with a child. You'll get wonderful letters and drawings, and you'll support projects that help many other children too. If, like me, you're a parent, you know we all try to give our kids the best start in life. Surely every child deserves that. That's why I'm asking you to call now or visit changeyourlife.org.au to sponsor a child today. You can help make the difference between children going to school or not, having clean water and enough food or not. That can be the difference between life and death. These children need sponsors right now. Please call 1-800-666164 or visit changeyourlife.org.au today. Thank you.
That could be a simple mistake. Or a deliberate move for a long-term advantage.
Perhaps.
But no, you're someone who plans ahead. I'm thinking you don't make a move unless you've thought things through. And if you don't have an answer, you'll find someone who does.
ANZ Wealth Managers can help you make the right moves to achieve your long-term goals.
Nice move.
Buy a new Volvo now and enjoy freedom for 3 years, because in addition to 3 years warranty and roadside assistance, you'll enjoy free 3 years or 60,000 kilometres scheduled servicing and 3 years free fuel. That's up to $9,000 worth of inclusions. For Scandinavian luxury at its best, see your Volvo dealer today. Offer now extended to June 30 and excludes all new V40 while stock lasts.
In everybody's digestive system, there's a balance of good and bad bacteria. But everyday diet and lifestyle factors, fatty foods, alcohol and some medications can throw out this balance.
Have you had urine health plus today?
Imagine if creating the space you need was easy and affordable. Imagine a space with versatile internal layouts, like a games room, granny flat, or even a holiday home. Imagine if you could start planning your space online with 3 different sizes to choose from that then arrive flat packed, which could be built to lock up in just 7 days, ready to fit out. Imagine if you could buy this space from Bunnings Warehouse. You could own a building yourself or with the help of a registered builder. Start creating the space you've been waiting for at smartspacebuildings.com.au.
Australia's biggest stock take sale is now on with a big $130 million clearance, including 40 to 50% off selected women's clothing by Wayne Cooper, Stella, Cooper Street, Bast, Regatta and more. Not available online or with other offers.
There's my store.
oncoming.
Should you be looking at investment property?
All right, something a little bit different.
It's good to meet you again. It's been a while.
Marius Kloppers and also incoming CEO Andrew Mackenzie.
Uncharted territory, 2.75%.
They've come out of hibernation first time since 1960.
This is Sky News Business, Australia's business